Daniel Sports Central, we go over our first college football schedule preview of this offseason, and it's going to be over Georgia, the defending national champions. This team has won 2 straight national titles heading into the 2023 season, and they have placed themselves as the top power in college football right now. But will this team once again be a major national contender in 2023? We'll be talking about that here today. We're going to be looking at this team's roster, seeing who they're returning, who they're losing, and previewing their schedule for the first time this offseason. Let's get started looking at a quick recap of 2022. This team was a perfect 15-0 in 2022. This team, they beat Oregon. Started out the season with a bang there. They beat Oregon 49-3. Turns out the Ducks were a great team in the 2022 season, by the way. So that was a very impressive win. Impressive resume-building win to start off the season there. And all the way through, this team they were dominant. They were consistent. We did see this team bring up a couple of questions. In the later parts of September when they beat Kent State in what was somewhat of a close game considering it was Kent State. They still won by 17, 39-22, but for the 4th game of the season, some were starting to question whether or not Georgia truly was the top team in the country. And then the next week they have a close game against Missouri on upset alert there, but they quickly quieted down all of those who were questioning them as they dominated Auburn and then Vanderbilt the next couple of weeks. Down the stretch, this team really played well as well. They dominated Florida. They beat Tennessee, the top-ranked team in the country at the time, by a couple of touchdowns. And they held Tennessee to 13 points in the matchup, by the way. Tennessee at that point was just a brutal offense, and Georgia's defense really showed their true potential and their ceiling there. And yeah, down the stretch, this team really played well. Beat Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Georgia Tech. Finish out the regular season. They beat LSU 50-30 in the SEC championship game. They beat Ohio State, what was a thriller, 42-41. What a game that was. That was truly your national championship there in the college football playoff Peach Bowl, because they just absolutely brutally dominated TCU in the national championship, 65-7. I still can't get over that score. They just completely destroyed TCU start to finish and truly put themselves as the top team this season. The national champions once again back-to-back, and this team is very much, I'd say, the top power in college football as we look forward to 2023. So that's Georgia's 2022 season. This team was a perfect 15-0. Here's your roster preview going to next season. This team does lose a few key players. Stetson Bennett's gone. Their starting quarterback the past couple of years led this team to a couple of national championships and a couple of national titles. But he has gone, and he's a quarterback that has brought excellence to Georgia. He's maybe not a top-tier quarterback. I would say he's definitely one of the top quarterbacks in the country. But, for example, he's not a guy that I draft super early. So we'll see where he goes in the NFL draft. But, yeah, Stetson Bennett, he is gone, so he's not going to be around going into next season. But, his stats were overall pretty impressive last year, 4,100 yards. 27 touchdowns over 7 interceptions, a 68% completion rate. Overall pretty impressive for Stetson Bennett. Kenny McIntosh is also gone. He was the top running back for this team in 2022. Had a significant impact on this team. 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns for him. But they do have some tremendous depth in the backfield, so I'm not concerned about this team losing McIntosh. There's also Dejon Edwards coming back. Kendall Milton's coming back. You got 2 running backs there combined for over 1,500 yards this season and 16 touchdowns. You're losing Kenny McIntosh, but I'm not worried one bit, as the backfield looks just as good going into next season with the depth that is back there. So, in the quarterback situation, you could say is maybe a question mark, but I do think, if they can get a quarterback that's even good in the slightest, I think this team will be okay. Stetson Bennett was a great quarterback. He definitely showed that he can play at a high level, and he truly brought greatness to this team the past couple of years. But I do think, the quarterback situation is maybe a question mark going into next season, but I'm not too concerned. I think, once again, if you can get a quarterback in there who can even play at a high level in the slightest, you'll be okay. Receiving core, Brock Bowers is coming back, which is huge. The top tight end on this team, top in receiving, put up over 1,000 yards on the season and 10 touchdowns. Those are outstanding stats out of a tight end. You look at the receiving core otherwise, you got Ladd McConkey coming back, who put up just right around 900 yards this past season, 9 touchdowns. You do lose your second tight end and your third in receiving, Darnell Washington, but I mean, you still got tremendous depth there in the receiving core, plus you're returning your top 2. Not concerned. You're losing 3 on the offensive line, so the offensive line does need to rebuild a bit. But once again, I mean, this is still a team that is one of the top teams in the country, if not going to be the top team in the country in recruiting. I think they're ranked number 2 right now. But Georgia, nonetheless, has got tremendous depth. They've been at the top of recruiting for multiple years now, and they'll be just fine, I'm sure. Now, they're losing 1 defensive lineman, 3 linebackers, and 2 in the secondary. So defensively, they do lose 6 of their starters, but I'm not, once again, too concerned. That's just the thing with these teams at the top of the college football world. Yeah, they're losing some talent. We saw that, and we see that year in, year out of these outstanding teams. But the thing is, with recruiting, they're nothing short of outstanding, and the depth is what really makes a big difference for these top teams. So they got a few key losses, but once again, outstanding depth, and brings it the question, this team is one of the main favorites to win the national title and the way to early projections going into 2023. So will this team potentially have a three-peat? Will they win their 3rd straight national title in 2023? I'm just going to say this. I think it's a very real possibility. The way that this team looks, I mean, I do think not having Stetson Bennett around, it's going to be an adjustment just because he's the quarterback that led this team to greatness the past couple of years. But I do think, I mean, once again, you get a quarterback in there. It's probably going to be a younger quarterback, I'd assume. We'll see what happens there. Maybe a transfer comes in, who knows. But I do think Georgia is going to be just fine going into next season, and they very much should be a major national contender going to next season. Transfer portal and recruiting going to next year. You got Adonai Mitchell, who is taken off to Texas. He was one of the receivers on this team. He didn't have a major impact, just had 100 yards and 3 touchdowns this season. Tresman Marshall is taken off, linebacker to Alabama. You're losing 3 players to Nebraska here, MJ Sherman, Jacob Hood, and Eric Gilbert. Of course, Jacob Hood on the offensive line, offensive tackle, you are losing him. But once again, with a lot of these positions for Georgia, I'm not too concerned because they've just got outstanding depth. Ra Thomas, receivers coming in from Mississippi State. Dominic Levesque coming in from Mizzou. So you got a couple of the receivers coming in, and Smoke Buey, defensive back, is coming in from Texas A&M. Recruiting-wise, this team is 2nd in the country, 2nd in the SEC, so I'm not concerned at all. They got 5 5-stars coming in and 17 4-stars. So, and this is something new that I'm doing this year. I've got the future forecast meter. This is where I say and state where I think teams stand, what the future looks like. Does a team have a bright future or potentially a concerning future? And for Georgia, I mean, this is easy. They've got an outstanding future. I see this team continuing to be a major power in college football for many years to come. They have, I'd say, overtaken Alabama now that they've won 2 straight national championships. This team is the team to beat in college football going into next season. And so, I mean, that's the thing. And so I've got this team at a 10 out of 10. It's basically based on percentage. So basically, I think there's a 100% chance that this team has got a bright future, or you could say an excellent future for that matter. Not concerned one bit about Georgia. But that said, let's look at your schedule now going into next season. So you got UT Martin to start off the season on September 2nd, followed by Ball State in South Carolina. First conference game is on the 16th. You got UAB coming to town, and then Auburn on the road to finish out September. As for October, you got Kentucky at home, Vanderbilt on the road, and then Florida in a neutral location after your bye. And then for November, you got Missouri at home, Ole Miss at home, Tennessee on the road, which will be one of your more challenging games, and then Georgia Tech on the road to finish out the season. So let's look at September here. UT Martin, I do think that's an easy win. Ball State, easy win as well. I mean, this is not a terribly challenging schedule. I mean, Tennessee on the road is, I'd say, for sure your toughest game of the season. The first 5, I do think you're favored in all 5 of those. Maybe the South Carolina game could trip you up a bit. I think South Carolina could be a team that could reach 8 to 10 wins next season. Spencer Rattler coming back. This is the team that's very much on the rise, but you do have them at home. I think you take care of them. I'm going to say 50-80% though with the chance to win right now. I'm not officially predicting a schedule. I'm not fully predicting this team's record yet. We'll do that in the summertime with our final predictions. But as of right now, I do want to favor Georgia in all 5 of their games. UAB and Auburn, I do think, are most likely wins as well. So the ceiling heading into October, I think, is 5-0. The floor is 4-1. Let's look at your October games. Kentucky and Vanderbilt, both easy wins. I think I'm pretty comfortable already picking wins for those. Kentucky isn't looking great going into next season. No Will Levis. We'll see what happens with them. They got Devin Leary going in there, so they still, I think, should get to a bowl game. But I do think you take care of them. You take care of Vanderbilt as well. Florida in a neutral location. This one is interesting. I do think Florida is very much in a rebuild phase right now, but I will put that game in yellow, saying that it could be a closer game, although I do want to favor Georgia there for sure. So ceiling remains undefeated at 8-0 heading into November. Let's look at your November games, Missouri and Ole Miss. I think you win both of those as of right now. Ole Miss may be closer than some of these other games. I do think Ole Miss remains a contender going into 2023. Now, Tennessee on the road. This is the most interesting game of the season for Georgia. In general, this is a fairly manageable schedule. No tough non-conference games for the Bulldogs. I mean, I think Tennessee is definitely your toughest game of the season. So it's crucial for Georgia, considering the schedule isn't terribly difficult. This team is really going to have to win all their games, I think, if they want to get into the college football playoff. But who knows? I mean, this team is still in the SEC, which is a brutal conference. But I'm just saying the schedule isn't that difficult. But Tennessee on the road definitely is a tough game. Right now, I will be favoring Georgia. But, I mean, that's still a long ways away. So we'll see what happens during this offseason. But as of right now, I do want to favor Georgia. And then Georgia Tech, easy win as always. So in the end, I think the ceiling is definitely undefeated for Georgia. I will put the floor at 10-2. So that's the worst that I think Georgia could be this season, is 10-2. But I mean, I don't think this team has any chance of losing more than 2 games. I'd be stunned if that were the case. Honestly, I think 11-1 to 12-0, more than likely 12-0 is the most reasonable projection for Georgia at this point. This team is here to stay. They're an outstanding football team, tremendous depth, a lot to like from Georgia going into this 2023 season. So that said, this is being recorded January 31st. So there's a lot of time in this offseason. We'll see how things turn out. Appreciate you guys watching as always. Let me know your thoughts on Georgia in the comments below. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.